So I'm a behavioral science advisor. I work at the intersection of persuasive tech, behavioral science, and society and culture, which encompasses ethics. I do a bunch of things. But I'm particularly interested in how we live fuller lives in business, even in marketing, between ourselves on this planet as technology advances at a rate that feels increasingly rapid and potentially fraught. So it's with that lens I'm going to be looking at trust, connection, and influence today. So, context setting. Unless you've been hiding away somewhere happily in a cave, you will most likely have seen headlines about global economic outlooks, the cost of living going up, inflation, and how people are adapting their purchasing behaviors accordingly. We're seeing people spend less. EY came out with a study earlier this year, and we're talking about how brands are increasingly failing to meet customers in their messaging about their values and their needs. 88% of consumers feel that the brand messages aren't meeting them where they are. More than half, around 53, say that they're concerned with the rising cost of living. So there are some really pressing questions, fears, and uncertainties that many of us in this room, all of us being consumers, face. And if you dig into the wider geopolitical context, Edelman each year put out a trust report looking at the public's trust in government, business, NGOs, and the media. And sadly, for social media and influencing and marketing, social media has experienced a drop in public trust overall this past year. So work has been cut out for us. And this is particularly pronounced in people who fall under the increasing category of folks whose income has come down. And so all of this is impacting consumer behaviors and trends. And there are some trends that I think are really worthwhile us knowing about if we're going to reach people effectively. So folks typically, in general, are making much more deliberate choices about how we spend money, with which brands, and on what purchases. We're being more scrutinizing. Is this really necessary? We're going to be more cautious with where we put our money. And many people are even going so far as to cancel or postpone those joyful major expenses like holidays, luxury goods, dining out, in order to try and stabilize the economic boat, if you like. Now, in good times, when it feels like the future is rolling out in front of us, like for me it was in the 90s, traditional aspirational marketing messages would have had a bit more impact. So imagine when you get this amazing dress or this amazing razor or like whatever it is, a Gillette, the best a man can get kind of thing. That kind of stuff doesn't fly as much anymore. When there's greater economic precarity and psychological discomfort, we don't respond well to aspirational messages because it feels too far away. It feels unrealistic and unreachable. Instead, we respond better to emotionally resonant messages that focus on trust, being able to trust a brand, on shared values and the value that you get from that specific purchase, and resilience. This is going to make it easier for you to adapt, to be supported, to be able to make choices that matter to you. So, given all of this uncertainty across different markets, how can we earn and build trust when people are increasingly hesitant to part with our hard-earned cash? Well, here I want to dig into some of the generational differences that you're starting to see, and I'm going to name this out because the text is going to be too small. So this is a Forbes Communications Council study that came out for last year, and they found that when it comes to differences in generations, people in the Boomer and Gen X category, the overwhelming majority, so 73% and 68% respectively, tend to value significantly the earned reputation of a brand. The younger generations, Millennials and Gen Z, value this, but less so. And when you look at the kinds of things that you see split these generations, social media presence and recommendations from influencers only really persuade the younger two generations, so Gen Z and Millennials in general. We are making sweeping generalizations here, but these are some of the trends. And when you cut it down to where and how people make their purchases, again, huge difference between Gen X and Boomers and the Millennial and Gen Zs. Gen X and Boomers will still buy the majority or much of their purchases in-store. When it comes to online purchases, Gen Z and Millennials are the ones that will typically go to the company's website, mobile app, through social media, and through an influencer. So thinking about the younger cohorts being where the influencer market is, what is it when it comes to influencers that will grab people's attention in the current psychological, economic, cultural climate? Well, one of the most important factors when people look to influencers and decide whether or not they're going to trust them, follow them, buy from them potentially, is transparency. And this comes from the State of Influencer for Marketing for Consumers report from Impact. Transparency, being open and appearing honest about the paid relationship, saying, look, this is the product I love, I'm also getting paid for it, being upfront about it. Integrity, consistency, accountability, it's basically show me why I should trust you and I might be open to listening to what you have to say. And again, with authenticity, it doesn't have to be loads of posts all the time. According to this report, 43%, nearly half, see influencers who post only 2 to 3 times a week as authentic. And it's also about de-risking the product purchase for the customer. So if you see an influencer with a brand that they actually like, unboxing it, talking about their experience, 57% of consumers say that seeing that person, that influencer, share their experience of the product is much more likely to get them to buy. Because we're relational, right? We look to other people to say, okay, what's in it for me? If you like it and we share similar values, I'll probably like it too. And so we see this reflected in a lot of the academic research around who we trust and how we respond to brands during economic downturns. And there was a piece that came out, it's a really seminal piece in Harvard Business Review, that found that when things are tough economically, companies that have strong brand positions, reputations, values, they're in good standing, they've earned trust, these are the ones that tend to outperform companies that rely solely on things like discounts or financial incentives to get people to buy. So brand position is also about earning trust and responding to people's need for being met in their values. And it's not about faking values. It's about expressing where you stand as a brand and then finding the people with whom that connection is going to happen. So thinking about trust, all of you in this room, and we've got some espresso martinis and Pims to help grease those wheels of trust a little later, whatever kind of relationship you're thinking of, whether it's between lovers or friends or family members, or between an influencer and their community or their followers, or between a brand and their consumers, trust, psychologically speaking, time and again, is the single most important ingredient for the development and maintenance of thriving, happy, well-functioning relationships. And when things are risky, this comes into its own even further. But it's not just about relationships between individuals. It's also, especially in the world of influencer marketing, about the partnerships that you forge, about the media outlets, the influencers that you pair up with. Are they a good fit? What about the affiliates and the customer referrals that you get through? And trust isn't something that's just nice to have. When it comes to business, it translates into really specific, tangible benefits and outcomes for the long-term success. So things like increased spending. When a brand is trusted by their customers, you'll often see a spike of consumption, 25% increase in spending. This is a study by Deloitte. Edelman found that 53% of customers will recommend a trusted brand to other people. And as we'll see in a little moment, with the amount of fake AI-generated reviews, word of mouth, person-to-person referrals is going up in terms of its power and importance. 63%, again, according to Edelman, of people will buy new products from a brand, even if it's more expensive, when trust is present. And when you mess up, because we all mess up and brands also mess up, 55% of customers will stay loyal, even if the proverbial hits the fan. If you have earned their trust, they'll give you a bit of wiggle room, so you have a greater opportunity to adjust, apologize, and move on. And as I briefly mentioned, AI is really shaking things up and changing the game. Most of us, I would guess, are feeling pretty overwhelmed, stressed. We've got to be more effective, more optimized in terms of how we're placing our energy. And of course, AI comes along, especially Gen AI, says, I'm going to help you. We'll create the content. We'll help you sort out your strategy. We'll boost your views on LinkedIn by creating posts for you. And I've tried it too, and I use it for my podcast to create snips using Opus clips, and it's great. But at least the content is original. But the problem is that so many of us are turning to this, because why wouldn't we, that we're seeing AI homogenization, that flattened tone of voice. I don't know how many of you have, and I'm sorry to pick on LinkedIn, have been on LinkedIn and just seen so many posts of just that's AI generated. Any of you? Some of you. And I'm like, come on, this used to be a useful platform about connection. Rein it in. This is just like, I'm not going to swear because it's too early in the day, but it's really bad. And we're also seeing it impact other places where actually potentially the ramifications are much more serious. So in the world of journalism, this idea of AI slop, and what happens when the internet becomes or reaches that critical mass where there's so much AI-generated content that becomes used to train the whatever, ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, to then create more stuff that becomes increasingly derivative and just meaningless and bland. Like, influencers work because they're distinctive, creative. They speak to something human in all of us. And we're seeing some really curious impacts starting to show up in the world of AI when people use it to author emotional messages, like marketing communications. This is a really important one for you guys. So the AI authorship effect. This study came out last year, and they found that when you use generative AI to craft emotional messages in marketing comms, people experience a sense of moral disgust. They're like, hell no, don't touch me with this stuff. It's ameliorated if you're using a chatbot and if you're clear about who's doing what, but most of us actually experience that moral disgust, and it can negatively impact and cannibalize a brand's hard-earned trust and reputation, which then obviously impacts the bottom line because you're eroding trust. And so we have to be really conscientious about how, when, and where we use AI and in what way to make sure we're not undercutting what makes resonant communication so impactful, which is that distinctive human factor. Curiously, perhaps obviously, the fact that there's so much AI stuff out there means that the value of trust, of who is doing the posting, is becoming increasingly relevant. So for influencers, this is great news. It's like, I'm going to be the one that's earned the trust. I know my community. I've grown it organically. And now is my chance to shine. This is your moment. And that's because trust is earned through authenticity. It's something which we've seen in the research improves people's receptivity to your message. If someone believes you're being authentic, they're much more open to hearing what you have to say. This enhances the perceived quality of your message. People actually listen to what you're saying and therefore think about the quality of what you're offering in terms of a product you might have used. And it also increases purchase intention. This is all done from academic consumer research. We know that the proof is in the pudding. The problem is, when the game has changed so much in the last 2 years with Gen AI, new fault lines begin to emerge, which we all then have to adapt to. So I don't know how many of you saw this. It's a bit American-centric, but Piers Morgan and Oprah Winfrey saying, well, people are getting duped by deepfake versions of us. Tom Hanks came out with this. I saw recently, it was an interview with Steve Bartlett from Diary of a CEO, and he was saying that people were being defrauded because they saw videos of him on Instagram asking for money. So like, it's become a real problem. And we're also seeing the propensity to fall for specific types of influencer scams divide again, depending, in general, on which generation you tend to fall in. So in this one, a fascinating article in Adweek, looking at the ways in which different people across different generations make purchasing decisions. So the idea is basically that we make choices from a different place. Unfortunately fortunately or unfortunately, depending on where you land, Gen Xers and Boomers tend to appreciate products that are proven to work. Show me the stats, give me the data, show that it works, I'll buy it. It's more of an objective, grounded way of making a decision, I think. However, most of us who I think most people in this room, raise your hand if you're a millennial, so if you're 42 and under to about 20-something, 30-something. Gen Z, so younger than 25-ish. And then boomers, Gen Xers. So we've got a mix in this room. So feel free to challenge me and challenge each other. Like, is this data borne out? Is it true that Gen Zers and millennials tend to go with the brands that make them feel something? And if that is true, what are some of the things that are coloring our perceptions? A lot of people across the world are feeling worried about greater senses of being prejudiced against, being biased against, discriminated against, whether it's about one's race, the body that one's in, how one shows up, all of the different ways you can slice and dice it. There is this sense of concern of, am I acceptable? Am I going to be picked on and persecuted against, really? And so this creates quite a particular context to reach people. And so when we're thinking about influence, the scales have shifted away from the sense of, I want someone who's in control, in power, who's dominant, to, I want someone that gets me, that's going to be compassionate, that's going to sense where I am in my life and meet me on that level. Okay, so where does this leave us? Well, whatever generation you're in, whatever culture you're in, wherever you fall on that spectrum, I would suggest that brands that stand the greatest chance of success have to demonstrate their values by aligning with the right partners. And you don't have to be all things to all people, but you do have to know your market. And this is because in psychological studies, you find that we tend to be attracted to that which is similar to us. So it could be people who share the same demographic characteristics. So how many of you live in North London? Oh, not that many. Oh, we're outnumbered. All right, South London? Oh, no. Okay, outside of London. Okay, right. So outside of London versus in London versus north-south, there are some divides. So you can use it like to place people demographically through physical characteristics like where you're living or whatever, or shared values, beliefs, and experiences. And you see this borne out in the data. So this was another study done by Impact, and they talk about it as the know, like, trust factor. And particularly when it comes to young millennials, 92% reporting, people aged 28 to 35, that they value referrals from someone they know, someone that feels similar, that they can trust, they have an existing rapport with, and that community opinions are even more important, especially among people who've gone through a hard time in the last couple of years. And so this is because the kinds of values that we hold up in our individual personal lives, when we see them reflected in a brand, there is an attraction that happens. It's a sense of there must be a similarity here. And therefore, we bond with this identity, it's called social determination, of shared values. And this is why values-led marketing and influencers that we see as being similar to us tend to be more effective and persuasive. I'm going to give you a quick example, one of my favorite ones, Louise Boyce. Take a look at this video.
Get ready with me.
Hey, hold on. Who are you talking to? I've been telling you to get ready for you. Yes, thank you. This is mine.
Yes, but
This is the L'Oreal Paris.
age perfect Le Duo serum.
Keep it back. It has collagen peptides to boost your skin, helping to rebuild firmness and smooth wrinkles.
Yes, and it also has vitamins B and C to reignite radiance.
Yes, I told you that.
What did you know about
This is the age-perfect collagen cream.
this? Skin is firmer and tightened.
Louise, what have I always taught you to do? Go up like this. Up.
Yes, Mum, I know.
And have you heard of this?
What's this? Ooh, cool silver, enhancement silver treatment.
Let's do one of those cool transactions.
Transitions. Are you ready for your transaction?
Yeah.
Let's do this. Oh, wow, Mum!
Mama, Nana, get ready with me.
She's really funny. She's got young kids and she does all these amazing stits. But the reason it works so well is because she knows her audience. She's got this sense of understanding the emotional cadence of where people are at, of maybe putting herself in other people's shoes. And therefore, when she does a brand promotion like that, people are more likely to watch. And this is because of evolutionary social theories, the idea that we've emerged together as a civilization and succeeded because of our capacity to collaborate, because we can imagine what other people are feeling, what it's like to be in their situation. And this comes down to empathy. People talk a lot about empathy, but when we're thinking about influence, we have to be mindful of three different structures which are distinct in human beings. The first of which is cognitive, so being able to imagine yourself in the shoes of your customer. You know, it's perspective taking, thinking about what it's like to be living their lives, to put yourself in a fictional place or person. But there's also something else, which is the second empathy type, and I want you to guess what type it is by watching this video. So I don't know if there's any Spanish-speaking people in the room. few. Okay, so despierta means wake up, and so it's this woman who's presumably singing about her love who's dying. Wake up! And Chucho, I don't know how old he is. Maybe he's like 4 years old. I don't know if he's had a big love. I doubt that if he has, he, she, or they has never died. So he's like singing despierta. So what kind of empathy is this? We've had the cognitive. What do you think is happening here? What kind of empathy is it? Feelings, it's emotional, exactly. And so even though you don't necessarily know the word, you're feeling his feeling. He's heard the feeling in the voice of the woman, and he's identified and responded to this at an emotional level that then we experience, even not knowing the language, because you don't have to think about it. It's just, it happens for most humans, I would suggest, fairly automatically. So emotional empathy is another one. When you see or hear someone feeling something, it feels quite contagious. The third kind is a different kind, and I will apologize in advance for putting you through this, but let me know what you think this type is.
So many videos, but nothing.
Oh. Okay. I don't know if any of you noticed, there were no women in that video. Either because they're too smart to get caught or for another unknown reason. Jury's out. But how many of you felt that in your body? Right, there's like an echo in our bodies. I'm not a bloke, and I felt echoes of that in my body, and often we'll find echoes even across other animals, mammals, birds. Like we have a physical, somatic empathy that is like an echo of someone else's physical experience. So it's the physical response from the mirror neurons that mirror effectively other people's experiences in our somatic nervous systems. So this is another reason why memes such as that are so effective, because we feel them, even if it's just on a screen. Now, humans, people who are persuasive and able to influence in this way, tap into all three of these empathy constructs, the cognitive, the emotional, and the somatic. AI cannot do this. It can merely perform, and it does that poorly at best. So at a time when people are using more of these tools to try and connect with people, what you find is that real human connection is at a premium. But in order to gain traction, to really influence people, obviously influencers don't operate in a vacuum. They have to be embedded within a wider, interconnected ecosystem or group. And this is where community comes in. So thinking about community, there are certain things that we have to be aware of that are at play in terms of dynamics when we are operating in communities. Now, you might want to think about your own community. You can slice it and dice it however you want. One of the things that we see when we observe closely is in-group versus out-group dynamics. So, for instance, I could say, so I live in Barcelona, and I say, okay, I'm an ex-Londoner living in Barcelona. I've noticed in my group of friends that those of us who are primarily English-speaking, we will start using English words in Spanish ways. So if you say demonstration in Spanish, you'd say manifestación. So then we start saying to each other, oh, you're going to a manifestation this weekend. We don't mean fucking like shamanic, this, that, and the other. We mean like a demonstration. And so, but that's an in-group dynamic specific to that tiny pod. So, and you find this on social media. So there are specific dynamics that only people within a particular group will recognize and feel kinship for. I'm going to read this out to you because you won't be able to read it. I hope this lands with some of you. Okay, so this example here, before I play it, it says, when I find out that the Shipibo-inspired shamanic tantric Mayan cacao ceremony happening in the basement of the mother of my human design coach is sold out. I mean, I found that funny because I have friends who are into this stuff. Okay, let's move on from that. So then another element didn't land quite as well as I thought it would. Maybe it's a BCN thing. So then another aspect of community is that we look to each other to learn socially and then conform to the things that we see, which is where trends come in. So I tried to find some socially awkward trends to share with you because, you know, why not? This is one that I particularly love. Have a look at this.
I trust my wife.
Connie? Why?
I'm sorry, I
This poor guy, he doesn't trust his wife anymore. Or this other one, thinking about social learning and trends. It's like when you try really hard to do something because everyone's doing it and it just kind of flops a bit, but then like you're still trying to hang in there. This one, brutal. I love how he just lets go. He's like, this is yours.
It's okay. Come take a picture. Oh, stop. Take a picture. Take a picture.
Bless them. Like, I mean, they're going for it. 10 points for effort. The other thing, shared emotional connection. Now, this can be, again, thinking about generations, which I've mentioned a few times. This can be a generational wink. Here's one that I particularly love. See if you recognize any of these. So, me as a dad, dropping off 1935. Black velvet. All right, I'm not going to go through all of them, but it's quite good. And if you're someone who was raised on that kind of, if you're millennial, like perhaps the old age, you'll recognize some of those. So the other thing that you see in community, and you sometimes see online as well, is this ability to offer mutual support for others. And you also see it across species. I can't believe this came up on my feed. It's perfect, but look at this.
小伙，手上扎刺了，咋办呢？
I know. And so that's across different species, right? Another one, I'm not going to show you the full 8 minutes, I'll show you a few minutes. Thinking about mutual support, often we forget that influencers become, often, not always, become influential because they meet a deeper need, because they're moved by something. It can be something they're really passionate about, it could be a cause, or it could be, I don't know, a particular theme, and they reach people on an emotional level. And often now when we talk about influence, we talk about, you know, the stats of it and how persuasive you can be and the rest of it. But at its heart, influencing someone often stems out of a desire to connect and to help. And so this example, and you'll spot the brand later on, is a really beautiful one.
I live in a duplex, and when I would come home, I would notice this amazing art gallery of chalk on my sidewalk and the stairs. I would join in and add some art so the artists would see it when they come out. I eventually met the artist, Don Jr., Poetry, Honesty, and their dad, Don Sr. Every time I would leave, they would say hi, and I would say hi back, and we'd leave art for each other on the sidewalk. One day I was leaving to go for a bike ride when Dad wasn't his normal energetic self, and he just looked down. So I asked him, "Are you okay?" He said no. That's when he informed me that the mother of his youngest 3 children had passed. And my heart broke for these little ones and for him. And I wanted to do something, so I created an Amazon wish list. I wanted to get some winter clothes and boots, jackets for the kids, and some toys that they could play with, so maybe Dad could hang out and watch or take a little break. I reached out to my amazing social media following, and you guys said, "No, Colin, we're gonna give this family the greatest Christmas ever." And you guys did. Boxes started to come. Eventually, I surprised Dad.
So I'm not going to show you the whole of that clip. If you want to find out how it finishes, it's at Colin313 on TikTok, and you'll find it. And so obviously you have the brand placement, but it's not actually about that. It's about real human connection and helping one another out. And finally, the last piece around community. You might have heard about like the love hormone oxytocin, which is about bonding. It's also about othering people who are outside of your group. Nothing is kind of a panacea. But we also see influence be wielded when we see examples of social bonding and trust, even in unexpected contexts. So the last example I want to share with you today is this one.
Cause if the whole world was watching, I'd still dance with you. Drive highways and byways to be there with you. Over and over, the only truth. Everything comes back to you. You still make me nervous when you walk in the room. And butterflies, they come alive when I'm next to you. Over and over, the only truth. Everything comes back to me. And I know that it's wrong.
little bit of a kind of interspecies accompaniment. And I wanted to end there because the point about influence really is that it doesn't happen in a void. It's not just about business. It's not just about influencer marketing. Our capacity to influence is only there because it shows up in our desire to connect meaningfully with other people. And so we live in a context which is messy. You know, there's a beauty to being alive at this moment. There are also horrors, there are joys. We all inhabit this one precious, extraordinary planet. And what I'd like to leave you with is the invitation that when we are doing influencer marketing, when you are running your business, when you're talking to each other, when you're networking here today, what are the more beautiful questions you can ask? Because at the root of influencer marketing, actually, there's a deeper element, which is that question of connection and showing up to someone with compassion, with kindness, with a quality of attention that says, I'm caring for you and I'm here. And so I'll leave with this beautiful quote that I love by Dale E. Turner, who's a chap in the States. And he says, because everything we say and do is the length and shadow of our own souls, our influence is determined by the quality of our being. How do you choose to show up in the world? Thank you very much for your attention. You can find out more if you would like to.
Thank you so much, Natalie. That's
you.
lovely. We've already got a flood of questions coming in. If we want to go to the next slide, that is where you can go to ask Natalie questions yourself. But I had a few, I wanted to start with myself. I'm interested, a lot of your points revolve around academic research, and some of them revolve around commercial research. And I'm interested to know if you think the academic community is taking this issue seriously enough. Are they?
Which specific issue? There's so many of them.
The issue of trust, and trust within marketing specifically, but also the wider social media community.
Yeah. So that's a really good question. I think a lot of academic research is looking at ways in which our lack or increase of trust in organizations shapes political discourse, our sense of isolation in the world or connection in the world. So you can look at it from, and there's so many different areas of research. So whether it's cultural trends, geopolitical trends, or things like the loneliness epidemic, that's also about our quality of trusting one another and trusting that there's a wider net that then will be there to support us if we need that. So I think there's a lot of interesting research happening in the world of academia, but especially now thinking about AI's impact on how we relate to ourselves, relate to each other, especially in the realm of education, children, and media. And I think you do see a lot of convergence points between academic research and then commercial research, and also legal research about what's being done, what the impacts are, and how to adjust.
And do you feel that there's a need to have the academic scrutiny behind that, or do you think that the commercial research that is done is sufficient given it's for commercial reasons by and large?
Yeah, well, academic research is not beyond reproach. There are a whole bunch, no area is beyond reproach because it's messy lines.
Absolutely.
So academic research, there's loads of biases that creep into it. The social sciences also have had lots of replicability issues. And so the idea really with any research is knowing what are the blind spots, what are the issues that you find systemically within that area, and then trying to adjust for it. And I think what's interesting is if you come with both eyes open, the academic and the consumer eye, often the research is done in different ways that can then complement each other. So I think both are actually useful when you bring them into partnership with one another.
That's awesome. I've got some really interesting questions from the audience here. One of them says, let me find it, I lost it again. Are there particular industries that you think are struggling more than others to connect with both influencers and consumers? And how can the brands in these industries get around that?
Permission to speak completely candidly.
Absolutely, permission granted.
Right. So I think there are certain industries that are struggling because they need to be adapting to changing conditions, by which I mean, if you're thinking about things like the fossil fuel industries, the AI industry, which is causing a huge drain on increasingly small freshwater reserves, on power grid reserves, and bringing in, there's all sorts of industries that actually need to adapt. Life is cyclical. It's not just this linear thing where more growth on a finite planet is going to work. Clearly, it doesn't work. And so I think there are instances where industries need to change and kind of potentially pioneer new ways forward. I think a lot of younger people are acutely more aware of that than others. And so maybe we just kind of leave it there. I will be around if you want to challenge me on that later.
Awesome. We've got another one that's come in that I think is intriguing. It says, can the term influencer and the notion of trust genuinely coexist? Does another term need to emerge? So I guess this idea is that there's a commercial need that's driving the influencer as well.
That is a brilliant, whoever was the philosopher that posed that question, thank you. So I think it's about intent and being explicit. So if you are intentionally trying to influence someone else, to manipulate, well, we do it all the time. So for instance, I am trying hard not to swear because I know that we're in a professional context and we're not down the pub having a drink. So I'm reining in my language to influence you to feel like I'm being more professional. And like there are, we do this all the time. So we adapt our behavior to be appropriate, to respect the people we're in front of or what have you. So there's that quality of influencing, to manage how we're being perceived. Then there's also influencing by making people feel better, by paying them greater attention. But then there's kind of that question of when do you do something that is not in the interest of that person and you are shaping their behavior in a way that, that equation just isn't a balanced one. So if it's not towards mutual interest, that for me is where the question mark comes in and says, okay, if I like a brand and I don't know about them, marketing is actually useful because I want to buy eco products or whatever. Market to me is a good fit, it's aligned with my values, mutual exchange. But if it's some brand that's just, values washing, whatever, not so much. So I think it's an interesting, nuanced question.
Yeah, I guess I would add to that from my own perspective that it's there's enough opportunity out there for those genuinely mutual value-add transactions to happen, where you don't need to be limited to just, I'm pushing this out because it's something that I'm being paid to do. You can, the influencer ecosystem is very large and the brands that operate in it are very diverse. Which also brings me to another point that you raised earlier on. So you mentioned in one of your slides that Gen X and boomers are traveling in a different direction in terms of proof of product, whereas millennials and Gen Z are much more purpose-driven in their purchases. I'm interested to know if you think that that's a trend that will continue for the following generations, or whether there's some secularity to that. Is there a phase of up and down to it?
So often you'll find that a generation will kick back against the trends that define the generation prior. So thinking about, I'm just going to take a stab here, and I'm not someone who specializes in this area, but I have friends so I went to an art academy in Barcelona when I hit my early 30s, and I had friends there who were 18 and friends there who were 75. So amazing, rich mix of people. It was just so much fun. But some of the younger ones were actually a lot more conservative than I am. I'm like, this is really weird. I would have thought that it would keep getting more conservative. Don't drink very much. There's a lot less kind of partying of various descriptions. It's about health and wellness. There's more of a sense of conservatism in certain groups, because it also depends on which country you're talking about. Absolutely. So I think there are cycles, and the interesting thing is to note when these cycles are kicking in and perhaps why. But there's usually a counter trend to generations that have come before. And it tends to be cyclical in certain respects.
I guess the key then is working out when that counter trend will start.
And how it shows up.
Yes, absolutely. We've got we've only got 1 minute left, so I'm going to try and answer just one or two more audience questions. We've got one that's just come in that says, how can you take the theory of influence and apply it best for B2B businesses that are less focused on social media? It's an interesting switch in vertical. Yeah.
All right, I'm going to take this on a slight tangent. So imagine that you're having a conversation with someone and they're on their phone, they're not looking at you, and you're just like, what am I even doing wasting my life with this person? Versus you're sitting with that person, they put their phone away, they're paying attention, they're asking you questions that show that they're clearly listening, and they want to know, what is it that you're most struggling with right now? How can I best help you? Is there anything that you're really needing that I could potentially offer? That quality difference in experience is huge. And so many of us now are so accustomed to being distracted and our attention fragmented that we forget the power of the quality of attention that we pay one another. and to ask questions, to kind of put ourselves in the back seat and go, actually, I'm here to show up for you. And when we do that, the other person is much more likely to disarm, bring their presence to the conversation, and you end up with a much richer conversation that is much more likely to result in mutual benefit. That, for me, it's deeper than influence. It's being together, being present to one another so that you can resolve whatever may be like on the table to be able to help. So that's the one thing that I would say within influence, is it comes down to your capacity to be present, attentive to, and reflect. I suppose with that kind of quality of attention and focus and not be distracted. That makes a big difference.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for your time, Natalie.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.